Revolutionary War documentary is what they're discussing on NPR right now, which is why I had to go live and share some of it with you. One of the things he said that really stuck out to me was something I learned in college when I first started going to UGA and I took a history class. I learned something that I'd never learned in grade school about the American Revolution or about American history. And I just never heard this angle on it before. And it's the idea that we're told the American Revolution was all about no taxes without representation, all about the Boston Tea Party and trying to throw off these taxes. If we were not going to be able to vote for what the tax rates are set as, if the king is going to set those or the English government's going to set the tax rates, we're going to overthrow that system to avoid paying the taxes. Which, I don't know, to me there's definitely business interests in doing that, kind of like people overthrowing the tariffs now from Trump. But it didn't ever quite make sense. I accepted it, that no taxation without representation is the main thing they teach you in elementary school and high school and stuff about the Revolutionary War. But when I went to college, my professor said, no, actually there was a much more important factor than taxation, and it was Indian lands. See what they asked him what surprised you, and he said he learned something every day of the 10 years of making this documentary. But he also said the major motivator for the revolution was Indian lands. The people, land speculators such as Franklin and Washington and other supposed heroes of the war, supposed founders of the country, who were land speculators, and they wanted to sell land, basically sell land that belonged to the Indians to make a bunch of money. And that's turned into this manifest destiny idea, but it's part of this idea that America's going to be coast to coast, and that all the Indian lands, that the white man's God gave them those lands or something. It's this weird idea about stealing all the land from the Indians. Now, the way my history professor told me, and Kim Burns, this documentarian I'm talking about, his new documentary, seemed to back this up, is that the English government didn't want the colonies expanding. They wanted to keep the colonies contained. They wanted to keep treaties with the Indians, because keeping treaties with the Indians would keep the colonies contained. And they wanted, a size of colonies that they could manage. And so the English government was enforcing the laws against attacking Indians and taking their lands.
Civil war, with the revolutionaries and those who were loyal to British rule fighting each other on and off the battlefield.
And so the reason the revolutionaries wanted their own government is so they could steal the Indian land. I was like, well, that's an evil reason to start America, but
that people were underestimating the amount of anarchy and violence a revolutionary war would lead to.
So she sounded like she was right.
Adams' prediction about how horrible a revolutionary war would be, and learning more through your film about how horrible it was, and all the blood and anarchy and brother fighting against each other. I'm so war averse, which isn't to say I'm a pacifist, but I grew up watching World War II movies because it wasn't long after World War II, and then there was Vietnam, and seeing just all of that horror made me very, feeling lucky that I've never had to live through a war in my own country.
Welcome to Trump trying to start Civil War II.
It made me wonder, watching your documentary, which side would I be on? I'm not sure that I would be a revolutionary, because I wouldn't want to have war in my neighborhood. I wouldn't want to lose all the men in my life to war. If I was a mother, I wouldn't want to lose my son. I'm a sister, I wouldn't want to lose my brother. Have you thought about that? Which side would you have been on?
I think that's the fundamental question, and I really don't know what side I'd be on. I don't know whether I could take up arms for a cause, whether I would be willing to die for a cause, whether I would be willing to kill for a cause.
Causes are kind of arbitrary. Some sides are kind of arbitrary. It depends on what you're told.
And for a variety of reasons, we got sucked into doing a history of the Second World War, which we called the war. Before the ink was dry on that, I'd committed to Vietnam, and before the ink was dry in Vietnam, I said, we're doing the revolution. I'm drawn into the fact that it obviously represents the worst, but often the best of us. And there's so much that happens in the levels of it. And yet the elemental question that you ask is one thing all of us who've worked on it sound every day in some way. I'm not sure I have the answer. Of course, I might be a loyalist, but maybe I wouldn't be. But could I fight? Jefferson didn't fire a gun in anger. Patrick Henry didn't fire a gun in anger. Benjamin Franklin didn't fire a gun in anger. But George Washington did, and Alexander Hamilton did, and James Monroe did, and many other people fought in this war and made decisions of that kind. And as the last line of the Declaration says, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. George Washington may have been the richest man in America, and he certainly risked his life. Certainly risked his fortune constantly.
Yeah.
And let's remember that in addition, between his flaws and between the bad military decisions that he made, often, he also rides out on the battlefield, risking everything at Kips Bay in mid-Manhattan.
Living with his men in the freezing cold in the winter.
In the freezing cold and being able to inspire them. This is like the richest guy in America, or one of the richest guys in America. And at Valley Forge, he loses something like 500 major officers who've gotten letters from home saying, hey, we're making a lot of money off this war, selling provisions and doing this, and they desert, and he stays.
But that's the thing. A lot of the wealthy landowners who start off fighting for independence, they end up going home, and then it's the relatively poor people, the people who don't own land, and teenagers and felons, you say, who become the army. And it's kind of remarkable.
It's remarkable
that they succeeded. They had no training.
There's zero chance that they're going to succeed at Lexington Green on April 19th, 1775. And this is a war that has been proposed and sort of undertaken by property owners, from militiamen who are farmers to businessmen and merchants and big planters and rich people. But in order to actually succeed, it has to be, as you say, those teenagers and those felons and those ne'er-do-wells and those second and third sons without a chance of inheritance, and recent immigrants who have nothing. And so the end of the war is being fought in large measure by people who have little or no property, that it started out as a war to protect the rights of property owners. And so the interesting thing is, our textbooks say, the American Revolution was about bringing democracy. Democracy is not an object of the American Revolution, it's a consequence of it, because those people, as Washington himself said so movingly, it is a standing miracle that army stayed together and did it. And that's what impresses the French, and that's what impresses the world, is that. And in Johann Ewald, who we follow, and it says, who would have thought a century ago that out of this multitude of rabble, he's dismissive of them, could come people who could defy kings. And what you have to do is reward those people.
We can defy
the first
kings again.
Happens in Pennsylvania, when the Pennsylvania State Convention, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, extends to
But I'm so
all
grateful that
men,
the new Kinsburn Revolutionary War documentary
to own property, they can be in debt, and that's where
is
the
going
door
to
is opened,
highlight
and we can say we're
the motivation to
taking
take
steps
Indian
in
lands
some
for the American Revolution.
Well, that beautiful phrases like that are because of gratitude to the people who
No.
fought,
No,
or
it is.
some promise that they made to get them to stay in the army.
That's early in the war, and I don't think they've fully come to the idea. When he said all men are created equal, he meant all white men of property free of debt. And we don't mean that anymore.
He said even
And
George
a lot of
Washington
that
didn't want
anymore
black people in the army
happens
until he
over
realized
the course
that he was
of
wrong
the
and
revolution as it changes.
grew,
And what happens is,
evolved some
when
out of
you
his
have a clash
racism,
between British
and ended up
people,
freeing
that
slaves that he
suddenly
owned by
becomes
the end of
about
his life.
natural rights. This is the Enlightenment. You're suddenly talking about big ideas that the people who are serving the meals hear and understand.
Krista.
The native people at the borders understand. The women in the
Just
household
listening to the
understand
interview with
that
Ken
if
Burns
you are
about the
gonna
new
take your
Revolutionary
argument
War
with Britain and turn it
documentary
into this big,
starting on
huge
PBS
human
stations.
affairs, as Thomas Paine says, since the time of Noah do we have a chance to change things. And by the way, that's the story of America. It's a process word. Democracy is not a thing. It's a kind of an active verb. You're in pursuit of happiness. You're after a more perfect union.
We haven't
A
got
lot
to
of it has to
democracy
do
yet.
with both the poetry and the vagueness of the words that permit everyone else to find meaning and hope in it. And so, as the legal scholar Maggie Blackhawk says in our film, the Declaration of Independence is deeply significant
Thanks for
to
stopping
people
on
at the
mine.
margins. Not because
Brute,
they
you're wrong.
think for a second that they're immediately going to be granted those rights, but it says that those rights are theirs. And as James Fortin said, where does it that God says that white people are better than black people? And I can tell you, God never says that.
We're listening to the interview I recorded on stage with Ken Burns. His new documentary series, The American Revolution, premieres on most PBS stations Sunday, November 16th. We'll be right back. This is Fresh Air.
It's that time of year again. You probably have a ballot sitting in your mail
Do
stack,
you
or
think
maybe you've opened it.
one of the previous comments in a previous live from this Brute person is, do you think making decisions based on race is racism? And then later he says, what's a Nazi? So he's a Nazi. Would you let foreigners vote in your elections? What's a foreigner? What do you mean? Ken Burns, legend. So yeah, Ken Burns is making a new documentary about the the Revolutionary War, and it's going to start coming out this weekend, I guess. I'll probably shut this live down because there's no point in talking to Nazis. No one will ever miss you guys. The fact that I'm closing down this live and that you two Nazis won't get to say two more things, Brightleaf and Brute Hit or whatever, you won't get to say more things. No one's ever going to miss that. What you were about to say is not something that ever needed to be said. It's something that you might say that I'll make fun of you for. Yeah, you're a Nazi. Brightleaf, you're a Nazi. You didn't realize that being a MAGA makes you a Nazi? So one of the things Ken Burns mentions in his documentary is that the different sides of the Revolutionary War hunted each other down. So when we talk about Nazi hunters and hunting you Nazis and how you'll be hunted down, and in the Revolutionary War they burned each other's houses down and killed each other. So hunting you Nazis down is something that provides noble professions for thousands of Americans and humans around the world for the rest of our life, the rest of your lives, until you're all gone. Yeah, this guy Brute HT says, what's a Nazi? Because he's a Nazi, and so he's trying to deflect from what he is as a Nazi. If you talk to Nazis a lot in chat, like I end up doing because Net and YouTube puts 80-90% Nazis in my chat, you find out about how they operate. I can dismiss you as a Nazi. Brute HT says, you can't just dismiss me as a Nazi. Yes, I can dismiss you as a Nazi. You're a Nazi, so you're dismissed. Okay? We know you're a Nazi. You might be too stupid to realize you're a Nazi, but you're a Nazi. Okay, here's some indications about why you're a Nazi. You joined 10 years ago, you have 4 subscribers. Exact same ratio of all fucking Nazis. There's a few Nazis who have subscribers. It doesn't make you not a Nazi that you have subscribers, but you're definitely a Nazi. Brightleaf says, I'm learning new things about myself every day. So he's making light of the fact that he's a Nazi, that he doesn't generally admit it online, but when you can call him on Net and YouTube, so he's been safely on TikTok or something where you can't say Nazi. So
the dilemma,
sorry,
the trap,
back to Ken Burns.
Stake of argument is that
thank
we
you,
become
Outlaw.
so dialectically preoccupied. One
they are taking each other out. Groypers took out Charlie Kirk.
That don't exist. And so Richard Powers, the novelist, said,
hate, racism, bigotry is expensive.
Change a single person's point of view. The only thing that can do that is a good story. A good story is a good story is a good story. I think the story of the American Revolution.
We got plenty of good stories. Y'all aren't listening.
Conservatives are supposed to love the series Yellowstone, and that is a film about a rancher.
Wait, I'm going to stop you. I want to stop you to say that you did a series on national parks. Look at what's happening in the national parks. History has literally been escorted out of the parks, taken down, erased, and that's the climate that we're living in now. So in reality, you might have been.
Nothing makes him a good person.
Was at the Smithsonian.
He'll have nothing to answer that question with.
Are there bits of history?
There's no redeeming quality to a Nazi. He can stop being a Nazi. He has the potential to stop being a Nazi. There's nothing making him a good person now.
You're a Nazi. But
Being
we
a
know
Nazi
we're
made you a
living
bad
in
person.
time when history is being
Being a
erased,
MAGA Nazi made you a bad
It's
person.
race and
complicated.
diversity is being punished.
They did just scrub the word Enola Gay, which is the mother of the pilot who dropped the first atomic bomb, and that was the name of his plane, the Enola Gay, because it had the word gay in it. And I'm disappointed that we at this present moment, and it's not everyone,
They also
feel
scrubbed the names of
compelled
all these
to
black people.
take the simplified version of things and try to make it all morning again in America. We don't operate that way. I don't think a good story operates that way. And my argument about Yellowstone is that it's telling about all the stories. They're black and gay and female and white and poor and Native American. And greed is the one of the main objects of it. And the main character is a murderer, in addition to this big patriarch.
At this point, you're a Nazi if you're not anti-Nazi. Are you anti-Trump?
Beings, whether it's William Shakespeare or Kevin Costner or, God forbid, a documentary about the revolution, can have complexity and nuance. And
No, you're not.
better.
You're more flawed than
And
anyone because
I'll
you're a
tell you that
goddamn Nazi.
I couldn't have made any of the films we made outside of public broadcasting.
Well, that's another thing. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting has been shut down. And I know all of public radio and public television has lost money. You've lost some of your funding.
I've lost a great deal, millions of dollars as a result of the rescission, which, as you know,
But you had
clawed
billions left
back,
over.
2 years
Nobody's
of
crying
money
for
that
you,
had
Ken
been
Burns.
authorized and
already
appropriated and it promised, and it's gone away. And it's an incredibly short-sighted thing. This is a
It's
network
not
in the case of
short-sighted. It's
PBS that
fascist.
had
It's
William
Nazi.
F.
Call it the
Buckley and
fuck
noted
out,
conservatives
or we won't watch
shilling
your
for
documentary.
42 years, and that show's still on, still moderated by a conservative, but because some people did not like certain aspects of it, the idea that it had to be defunded, it will mostly hurt. WHYY will survive. I will too. We'll figure out ways to overcome that. More
Smaller
people
ones
will
won't
join
survive.
and become members in Philadelphia, and that will be a good thing. But the losers will be the rural stations, the poor rural
They're not the
areas
losers,
that
they're
will
the
now be
victims.
news deserts. No one will be covering the school board or the city council.
You're covering for
There will
Trump in your
not only
language.
be
Never
every
do that. It
children's
makes you a
on
Nazi.
time, but there will
Ken
be,
Burns.
Classroom of the Air and continuing education and emergency signals and homeland security things.
What are you
This
for,
is,
Brood HT?
you know,
You're a
this is
goddamn
big
Nazi.
deal.
What do you claim to be
And,
for?
places will lose what I think is the
I don't like anybody
in
chilling for
PBS
Trump.
that I know, and NPR by extension, the Declaration of Independence applied to communications.
I don't like anybody kowtowing to Trump.
I'm
He's
proud to
talking
be
a
an
little bit of a
American
good
has new
game,
meaning to
but he's
me.
got Terry
Because
Gross
I realized, like, during the Revolutionary
ruffled because he's
War,
not speaking
when
the
somebody
truth.
said, I'm proud to be an American, what they kind of meant was, I no longer consider myself British.
That's right.
I'm a patriot, I'm not a loyalist, and I'm proud to be a patriot fighting for freedom and revolution. I'm proud to be an
The
American.
thing that you're,
It just had
your
totally
flagship concern,
meaning
no
to
one
me.
knows what the
I
fuck it
wonder,
is.
like, if you felt that way.
I have
You want
been
concentration
very
camps, right?
engaged
What are you
with
doing to stop
trying
Trump's
tell the stories
concentration
about
camps?
this
Are you calling them
complex
concentration
American
camps?
project for 50
Are you
years.
worthless
And
as a
whether it's about
contributor?
the Brooklyn Bridge or the national parks.
Are you a
or
life
the
that doesn't
shivers,
matter?
But strangely, perhaps perversely, in the study of war, no more do I feel, even in things that are so drenched in contradiction and hypocrisy and blood, does that authentic patriotism that I think you're talking about come out and raise the kind of questions within themselves and between themselves that you've asked in that regard. Very
It bothers
sincere,
them.
basic, sometimes gut-wrenching questions. What would I have been? Could I have done
Trump
this?
can't
Could I have
happen to be
killed
right.
somebody else? Would I be willing to
You're
die for a
Antichrist,
cause, to give
okay?
up all
You
of
hate
my
Jesus,
good
you
fortune
hate
for
Americans, you
a
hate
cause, and then
humanity,
you're
you hate
beginning
Earth,
to
you hate
approach
nature.
but
You're
not necessarily
Antichrist.
make
There's no
the
happening to be
decisions that were
right about
made
that.
in every family, in every community, in every colony to become a state, to become a union, to become the United
Diet
States
Coke
of
isn't even
America.
good. I mean, you can agree with Trump on
Ken
that, and I'm not
Burns,
going to
it's
hate you
time
for it
for
because
us
it's
to
just
end.
Diet
Thank
Coke.
you so
But if
much
you agree with
for
Trump on
being
anything
here.
else,
Thank you for the
you're a goddamn
series. Like I
Nazi.
said, it was a revelation. And congratulations.
No, he can't
to
be
you
right by
and your
accident.
team and your
What do you mean right
co-directors
by
and
accident? What would he be right by accident
Thank you,
about? What are
Terry.
you
Thank
getting
you.
at? What do you think you're trying to get somebody to admit, you goddamn Nazi pedophile? Oh, if you're a diabetic, it's good. Okay. What does based mean? I don't speak inso-libertarian. I don't speak terrorist, insulibertarian. What does based mean? Say that in another phrase. I don't know what based means. I'm not an insulibertarian. Okay, so you guys don't have anything to contribute? Carissa, I appreciate you being here. Don't appreciate the rest of you. Nobody needs Nazis. No one will ever miss you. What you're going to say was never important. It was never significant. It was never going to help. You need to change who you are to matter. You need to change who you are to count. Okay. I'm turning off the live. Sorry, Carissa. Just it's all Nazis. It's all Brute Hit who doesn't admit he's a Nazi, and Brightleaf who doesn't admit he's a Nazi. People who are both stupid enough to be Nazis and also too stupid to even realize they're Nazis should not have internet access. Dismissive derangement. No, you're a Nazi. You should be dismissed. You should be dismissed from this life. You shouldn't be wasting other people's air. Brightleaf asks, Carissa, am I a crypto fascist? Nobody cares. Okay? So you bought some crypto. That makes you a crypto fascist. Sure, whatever. You're a Nazi. Okay? There's not a good word for it. Stop pretending there is. 502 Outlets. I see you later on the weekend. Next live. Yeah, I'll see you later. Maybe tonight I'll be back. What have I said that's Nazi supportive? You haven't criticized Nazis. I've been criticizing Nazis, and you're bothering me, so you're a goddamn Nazi. Brightleaf says, well, not a Nazi, but far right. No, you're a goddamn Nazi. Okay? You are a Nazi. You're also a pedophile. Do you go around wearing a pedophile t-shirt announcing that you're a pedophile? Telling people you're in the Epstein files or you're going to help protect the Epstein files? No, but that's what you do. You know, you might as well wear a shirt so people can avoid you further. Thanks, Carissa. I'm not going to stay live now. I was just going live to get that Ken Burns documentary recorded. No one will miss you, Brightleaf. You will not be missed. Let's look at your subscribers. Your channel activities. You joined 12 years ago and you have 0 subscribers. So you've never done anything ever in 12 years that anybody ever liked. Think about that. What a waste of life. If I was trying to save somebody from a horrible disease and I could just give them the cure for their horrible disease, why can't I save you from your wasted life when I don't even have to give you a cure other than stop fucking Trump and Putin? Stop being a goddamn Trump-Putineer terrorist pedophile. It's not a big accusation. It's a very small accusation. You're probably worse things than a Nazi and a pedophile, okay? You're probably worse than just a Nazi and a pedophile and a traitor. But we all know for a fact you're a goddamn Nazi and a pedophile and a traitor. You support Trump. It's that fucking easy. Stop. You're going to be hunted down for this shit, you dipshit motherfucker. Y'all see you later, Carissa. Brightly says, not gonna lie, I wish I was important enough to be on that list. You're not important. Why do you want to wish you were important enough to be higher up on the list when we come to hunt the goddamn Nazis down? Why do you want to be right after Trump and Stephen Miller? Right after Alito and Clarence Thomas? Why do you want to be the next person on the list who they take their houses and RVs away and give them to immigrants and we revoke your citizenship and we deport your ass to Siberia? Demetrius Antoine says, proof you're a goddamn Nazi? You say things like proof. That's all the proof anybody needs. You're a Nazi. Anybody can tell when they go through this chat, which they will do, that Demetrius Antoine, who joined 1 year ago and has 24 subscribers, is a total Nazi and should be hunted down for both LARPing as a black person and being a total Nazi. Brightleaf says, not on YouTube. Got to net in YouTube. Got to see if the measure, so the meaning of my existence is YouTube activity. The world is... Dude, you're just not important. You don't have ideas that matter. You're a goddamn Nazi. All you're ever going to do is repeat Nazi stuff. No one loves you. You don't love me. You don't know me. And you're not allowed to say you love me, just like you're not allowed to pray to me, to your Antichrist God. You're a goddamn Nazi and everyone hates you. Okay, stop being one and people can like you. Brute Hit says, how many shots till I'm not a Nazi? How many subs till I'm not a Nazi? It's not about how many subs you have. I said it earlier. You can have subscribers and still be a goddamn Nazi. But it's very indicative when 99% of the Nazis I see in my chat have 0 subscribers. You're one of them. Real people have subscribers. They put content on the internet, not just trolling comments. Demetrius Antoine says nobody is a Nazi. See, just like Trump trying to distract from the fact that you're Nazis. Like, sorry. You're all Nazis. You're all pedophiles.